Okay, Megan, let's talk about round robin.
Great.
So what is a round robin at a high level?
Adam, did you ever have an idea and you want to get feedback on that idea?
Every day.
Maybe you want to get a lot of different people's feedback on that idea,
Less than
right?
every day.
This is a great way to take one idea and sort of pass it around the room and get a lot of different kinds of feedback on it from a lot of different kinds of people.
Okay, so let's say I had a big category like my commute to work.
Sure.
And I wanted to say, hey, I would love to be on a scooter or a skateboard or roller skates or a pony or whatever it is. And I have this idea. That works to start off this process?
Sure, you could say, hey, maybe my idea is I want to take a skateboard to work, right? And maybe another idea could be like, I want to take my pony to work. You would have each of those ideas separately and you could run those around the room through a round robin process and get people to alternate telling you why that's a good idea or why that's a bad idea over and over again until you sort of have like a maximum sense of all of the possibilities for yes and for no for each of those ideas.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so round robin, high level, I have a concept or an idea that I want the pros and cons of.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. And so I'm gonna now say, I would like to take a jetpack to work because that has been my dream since the 80s. And is the first person gonna say, that's a terrible idea or this is an amazing idea? Like what if they actually agree with me, but it's not their turn?
Well, we're gonna force them to disagree with you.
Okay.
So this is sort of like, did you ever have that experiment in high school where you were sort of forced to take a side arguing yes or no, or debating yes or no for a different topic? Right, exactly. So the very next person that takes your idea of wearing a jetpack to work, whether they agree with you or disagree with you, are going to answer no because, and they're going to tell you why they think it would be a bad idea, right? So we're gonna sort of force them to consider that idea from the perspective of no. The next person after them will have to consider the idea from the perspective of yes. Maybe they disagree with the idea of taking a jetpack to work. We're gonna force them to try to figure out how to say yes to that idea. And over and over and over again until we sort of get to, we sort of have all the possible yeses and all the possible nos for that idea.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. In my experience when I've used this, you know, the strongest nos and the strongest yeses start, and then eventually, especially if you're reading what everyone else is saying, and you're trying to be additive, which is an important part of this mechanism, not be repetitive, you actually do run out of big yeses and big nos within probably 5 or 8 passing of the idea. Okay, well, let's reflect on our template. I know we have an example here that might be really interesting. So this example was, hey, I come to you, Megan, and I say, hey, we should think a little bit about raising awareness about those that are unfortunately experiencing housing insecurity, right? And are currently not in a permanent residence. Admittedly, you know, making a documentary is quite a complex process. Tackling big societal issues like this can be challenging. Now, I've noticed that my first block here has a no because, and of course it's anchored in cost. Is this a common objection that you're gonna see early on in the round robin?
I think so. I mean, if you think about most of the big ideas that you raise at work, some of the main reasons why we wouldn't do them tend to be someone says, hey, that's gonna cost a lot of money.
Fair enough. Yeah, and in fact, what I love about this particular example that you've organized is you've not only provided a text reinforcement, but also some visualization. So now I'm starting to think in terms of expense through maybe the camera or the camera crew, the amount of dollars and coins we're going to need, and so on and so forth. But then something interesting happens, right? So I pass you my card, which is my yellow card, and you say, no, Adam, it's too expensive. Now you're gonna pass it to the next person, and I see here, yes, because. So what's happening now?
Right, so this next person has said, actually, it's worth the cost of these expenses because it would be really great marketing for us, which means we should spend some of our budget on that.
I see. Okay, so it's a little bit of point counterpoint, and I can see now how at least the series of cards are remotely unpacking or sort of organizing the for or against, the optimist, pessimist kind of lens here. And I can now see that we've done that as we move through our example of yes or no, we shouldn't because of the cost. Yes, we should because it's good reach. No, we shouldn't because the access to the technology can still be a barrier, but actually we see, you know, different ways of working and organizing. And in fact, this could go on and on and on. Now, Megan, common sense would tell me that maybe after 6 or 8 passes or 10 or 15 minutes, I probably am running out of original big ideas. Has that been your experience as well?
I think so. And I think if we look at our example, this individual lands on a no because in order for us to effectively garner awareness, we may need to create an example documentary, skills we'd have to outsource, right? So they've sort of gotten everything from it would cost too much money to we'd have to hire people, to people have smartphones and everything in between. So that ending place may be like, we've gotten all of the yeses and nos out on the table, that if I still really care a lot about this idea, I know what I have to sort of promote or support to respond to the nos. And I know some benefits from the yeses.
Yeah, well said. In fact, one of the other synthesis moments I actually have on this part is I actually sometimes make markers of what type of functional responsibility the person giving the feedback was. Was the engineering leader overwhelmingly optimistic or pessimistic? So was she or he out there saying, hey, this is an amazing idea and I've been begging people to do this? Was the marketing person the one that was talking about cost, or was it the good old-fashioned chief financial officer who largely always wants us to spend less?
Right.
So really interesting way to hear kind of how you're making this a bit more time-bound, you're rotating it through, we're also capturing some anecdotes about who said the pro or con, not just actually the pro or con that was said. Now, as we zoom out to our template, the other piece that I find really interesting is there's a lot of ways to solve problems. So let's talk about this mobility issue. We joked a little bit about, jetpacks or ponies or horses or RVs or walking or good old-fashioned anything. And it turns out that if we were to say, hey, what's the right way for our employees to commute to the office? You might have an idea on one of these larger yellow stickies that says jetpack. And I might say via horse. And someone else might say something like, well, I don't want to even commute, I just want to use Zoom. Is that okay if we all have kind of competing or at least conflicting ideas?
Absolutely. And an activity like this really allows us to sort of get everyone's ideas out there on the table so that we can all be responding to them in this round robin format. So having lots of ideas at this stage in the design process is great.
Excellent. And one of the things that's really underrated about this is, let's say we were sitting at a team or a table of rather 6 of us or virtually collaborating through something like Miro. Everyone's going to put down their idea and then we're going to decide to pass it to on our either physical or virtual right. And at that point, you don't really know if you're going to get the yes because or no because of my answer or my idea or your idea, right?
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, I think we've covered the really important parts of the round robin. I guess my one other question is, have you ever seen this I agree or I don't agree go a little sideways? And the reason I raise this is sometimes we have big personalities in the room. Any kind of best practices or coaching you would give to maybe a more junior researcher that had to, by definition, involve very senior stakeholders, executives, or a population that they're trying to serve that they're not super comfortable with?
Sure. Well, you talked about this before when you mentioned having the engineers in the room, right? I think it's really important when you're doing an activity like this one to try to make sure everyone who's going to be involved in this idea in any way, bringing the idea to life, even the stakeholders for the idea or the recipients of the idea could be a part of a conversation like this. It's much easier to deal with the yeses and the nos at this level than when you've started to bring your idea to life and someone shows up and raises their hand and says like, hey, there's something wrong here, right? Having them in the room responding yes and no in this sort of safe, constrained way allows you to get a lot of information from people without having to tank your solutions later on.
Yeah, well said. In fact, one of the instructional kind of moments I would offer to anyone listening to this video is remind everyone that you don't have a choice to dissent or support.
That's right.
So it's not a personal opinion and acceptance, a validation, an amplification or rejection. It's simply an exercise in saying, hey, here's some opportunities I see, or this is a great idea because.
Right. Just because I want to take the horse to work, I might end up on the no, right? And so I have to come up with a reason that might not be a great way for me to commute. So maybe I say like, let me think about that for a minute. Why is this bad?
Sure.
So it's going to force different people to have different sort of levels of introspection about whatever the idea is.
Well said, Megan. Well, no matter if you're commuting via horse, rocket ship, or anything in between, Megan and I invite you to watch this video again and again and explore around Robin. We'll be eager to hear your feedback and look forward to your comments. Have a great day.